She is known as the one with the wiggly walk, the tantalizing temptress. She made the screen thunder with unparalleled glamour. In Hollywood, she is royalty. The people made me a star. No studio, no person decided that. But the people did. From then on, I became her. I became Marilyn Monroe. The girl before the name. Marilyn's life began as Norma Jeane Mortensen. She was born on June 1st, 1926 and raised in Los Angeles, California. She never knew her father. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, worked as a film cutter for a consolidated film industry. My mother, she had some mental disturbances. I was very young when she was taken away. I lived with some very kind foster families after that. But when you're that small, you just want to call every woman you see mama and every man you see daddy. I soon found myself in the Los Angeles City orphanage. I was 9 or 10. I remember asking the staff over and over, "Where is my mother? I miss my mother." And they just said, "She's dead." However, Marilyn's mother was not dead. In 1934, Gladys had a severe mental breakdown. She was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and spent the rest of her life in and out of hospital. As we look at these photos of young orphan Norma Jeane, it's hard to believe she would become one of the most iconic stars in Hollywood history. We spoke to Marilyn's old school teacher, Mabel Ella Campbell, about the girl she remembered. She was a youngster who looked as though she wasn't well cared for. Her clothes separated her a little bit from the rest of the girls. She was like a little girl, not as well developed as some of the other youngsters. She just seemed like a nice child, but not very outgoing and not very vibrant. My mother had a great friend called Grace Goddard, who became my legal guardian. It got me out of the orphanage, sure, but I moved around a lot at that time, living with relatives and friends of Grace's. I came back to live with Grace and her husband when I was 16. Grace and her husband were going to West Virginia for work. California child protection laws prevented them from taking me along. They wanted to put me in a home again, or I could marry this boy who was 21 at the time. I had to make a choice. It was just after my 16th birthday when I dropped out of high school to marry James. He was my neighbor, so I became a housewife. When James was sent off to serve in the Marines, Norma Jeane moved in with her new in-laws. We spoke to James Doherty about the marriage. My mother and Grace decided it might be a good idea. Norma Jeane and I got married, and I guess the next day, or maybe the same day, Mom asked me if I'd like to marry Norma Jeane. The thought ran through my mind. This is a very young child. At 21, you feel like a pretty grown-up man. So I agreed to it, with the thought that I'd be going into the service soon and she'd have a home with my mother while I was gone. She was a good cook. I recall she always liked to mix carrots with peas. Not because she liked to eat them, but because of the color. They looked good on a plate. I never knew Marilyn Monroe. I knew Norma Jeane Baker. Marilyn Monroe and Norma Jeane were two different people. Norma Jeane was my wife. Marilyn Monroe was a glamorous movie star. I don't know anything about her life. I never talked to her. The lens finds her. As James was sent off to war, young Norma Jeane joined the war effort, like many women of her generation. During the war, I worked as a technician for Radioplane. One day a man came in with a camera, wanting to photograph the women working there. They seemed to like the photos. I signed with the Blue Book agency soon after. Emmeline Snively ran the Blue Book modeling agency and remembered exactly what she saw. Norma Jeane looked like the girl next door, and I thought I could make her into something quite marketable in a short length of time. She was very beautiful in a clean-cut, American, wholesome way. We taught her photographic modeling, how to pose, how to handle your body, how to smile. She was always trying to lower her smile because she smiled too high, and that made her nose look a little long. She had a different kind of walk than other girls. She couldn't just relax her knees and walk smoothly. Every time she'd take a step, her knees would go all the way back and make her bounce. I used to appear on men's magazine covers, pin-up style, morale-boosting stuff. It was one cover that got me my first contract with 20th Century Fox. The world finally felt like it was opening up to me. Becoming Marilyn. Towards the end of the war, Norma Jeane made a decision. I divorced James. I've always had too much fantasy to be only a housewife. It was that fantasy that would become the catalyst for Marilyn's career in show business. Is it safe to say, Marilyn, your life has always been intertwined with movies? Why, yes, I guess I was always aware of my mother's involvement in working in the studios. From visiting the theaters, I became really interested in the actors, more than anything else. Jean Harlow and Clark Gable were my favorites. I even used to pretend, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, I used to pretend Clark was my father. Marilyn was at Fox for 6 months the first time, acting in films such as Dangerous Years. It was during this period that something else changed. That's when I got my name. I wanted the name Monroe. That was my mother's maiden name. He said I reminded him of Jean Harlow and Marilyn Miller, and that Marilyn went better with Monroe. From then on, I became her. I became Marilyn Monroe. What people don't realize is there has always been a persona, as much as a gown would be put on and taken off at the end of the night. Knocked down, getting back up. However, her rise to the upper echelons of celebrity would not be straightforward. In 1947, her contract was not renewed. The studio saw her as too shy and insecure to have a future in acting. Her first motion picture agent, Harry Lipton, spoke about this period. She was thought of as a joke by many people, and I think this hurt her very deeply because she was very serious. When Fox dropped her option, her immediate reaction was that the world had crashed around her ears, unhappiness and tears. And then, typical of Marilyn, she shook her head, set her jaw and said, "Well, it really doesn't matter. After all, it's a case of supply and demand." Although this insecurity would follow her throughout her life, she had never been one to give up. The following year, Marilyn signed with Columbia, acting in low-budget pictures. Columbia put me in this terrible picture called Ladies of the Chorus, and then they dropped me after 6 months. The calendar. Money was always a problem in those days. After Columbia dropped me, I couldn't get movie roles. I went back to modeling, like I'd always done during the war. I had this one photographer who would work with me often. He would always call me asking, "Can you do nudes?" And I'd say, "No, no, no." But as a girl gets so far behind on her rent, you do find yourself answering that telephone call. The photographer's name was Tom Kelly. Tom Kelly recalled the session. "When I first asked her, she turned me down. But after thinking it over for a few days, she came back and said she would like to do it. I think it was partially a favor. I had done her a favor once before, and she really did need the money. I was in debt, couldn't pay my rent, so I called him up and said, 'Are you sure they won't recognize me?' I made sure that he shot it at night with no one on set. He promised no one would know it was me. I felt deathly shy, exposed. I looked forward to forgetting it ever happened." Of course, that simple shoot became notorious. The calendar was called Golden Dreams. The images would eventually feature in the very first issue of Playboy magazine. The calendar alone would sell 8 million copies. There was an expectation that Marilyn would deny it was her in the photos. Why would I deny it? I was broke and I needed the money. It wouldn't be until 1950 that we would see Marilyn's first critically acclaimed roles, John Mankovich's All About Eve and John Huston's The Asphalt Jungle. Through her hard work, she signed a second contract in 1951 with 20th Century Fox. She would continue to play roles which typecasted her as the dumb blonde. In her next film, We're Not Married, her role as a beauty pageant contestant was said to have been created solely to present her in 2 bathing suits. It was when I was making these movies that I really did become fascinated by the film process. Everything about it enchanted me. I learned to dance and act. I did a few comedies early on, As Young as You Feel, Love Nest, Let's Make It Legal. They weren't very popular. I was aware I was playing a dumb blonde. I was very good at playing it. But I wanted to be an actress, not just this blonde ornament people talked about. On July 1st, 1953, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes was released. It has since become one of Marilyn's most iconic roles. The studio heads at Fox kept saying to me, "Oh, Marilyn, remember you're not a star." When I would do so much as request a trailer, I said, "Well, whatever I am the blonde, and it is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes." Her performance of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend would go down in Hollywood history. Awards followed. The Look Achievement Award for Most Outstanding Feminine Newcomer of 1952. Best Young Box Office Personality. And then voted by the Moviegoers of America as the most popular actress of the year. The people made me a star. No studio, no person decided that, but the people did. Joe. It was around this time that I met Joe. We married in San Francisco. He understood something about me, and I understood something about him, and we based our marriage on it. Joe DiMaggio, the once great Yankee Clipper, and Marilyn Monroe. Their honeymoon in Tokyo created pure pandemonium. Soon after, Marilyn traveled to Korea, where she sang for the troops. The highlight of my life was singing for the soldiers there. I stood out on an open stage and it was cold, but I swear I didn't feel a thing except good. The 7-year itch. In 1954, the 7-year itch created shockwaves through America. The film brought Marilyn a new contract with Fox, a bonus of $100,000, and a starring role in the film adaptation of the Broadway success. It was the 7-year itch that made Joe really mad. It wasn't the sole reason for our marriage falling apart, but his fury did show me how different we really were. It was a comedy part, but I couldn't really find the comedy in my life. Joe was very angry over the subway grate scene. He stormed across the set. The cameras cut. The crew went home. But I had to deal with the fallout. If there was ever to be an enduring image of Marilyn, this would be it. Standing over a subway grate in Manhattan, Marilyn's character lets the breeze lift her white dress. The scene was shot on Lexington Avenue and attracted nearly 2,000 spectators. It cemented her status as a sex symbol. Now, when people say this sex symbol thing, I don't quite understand. To me, symbols have always been something you clash together. But to be a sex symbol is to become a thing rather than a person. I don't want to be just a thing. That's the trouble. I've always found it peculiar that people can so easily associate blonde hair and a fine figure with being absolutely dumb. You're considered dumb. I don't know how this very limited view came to be. I don't think something like how a person looks or the color of their hair has anything to do with their intelligence. Shortly following the 7-year itch, Marilyn and Joe divorced. There were rumors of a violent dispute following the infamous shoot. Our marriage wasn't a happy one, and well, it ended in 9 months. New York, New Marilyn. So Marilyn left Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, her childhood home, for the East Coast. Me and my dear friend Milton founded our own production company. New York, New Marilyn. So Marilyn left Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, her childhood home, for the East Coast. Me and my dear friend Milton founded our own production company. I wanted agency. I was sick of being seen only as a sex symbol. I would like a variety of parts. She moved to Manhattan not long after. I was attracted by the poets and artists that lived in the city. My acting teacher, Lee Strasberg, and his wife Paula, they took me under their wing. I have a desire to be considered an artist too. I started their method of acting. Lee Strasberg himself spoke about what Marilyn was truly after. Marilyn always dreamt of being an actress. She didn't, by the way, dream of being a star. She dreamt of being an actress, and she had always lived somehow with that dream. That is why, despite the fact that she became one of the most unusual and outstanding stars of all time, she herself was never satisfied. When she came to New York, she began to perceive the possibilities of really accomplishing her dream of being an actress. Although Los Angeles is where I was born, I feel like in New York I finally found my home at last. When I'm no longer tied to work in Hollywood, I think I'll retire to Brooklyn. It's my favorite place in the world. In New York, Marilyn met a playwright by the name of Arthur Miller, an unlikely pairing. By 1956, they were married. Some like it hot. In March 1959, Marilyn won a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical for her role in Some Like It Hot. The film was a smash hit. However, stories from behind the scenes revealed it was a particularly turbulent production. Stories of tardiness and endless retakes flooded the papers. I've always said that an actor is not a machine. I'm sure I'm not the only person on those film sets who has real quirky problems. It just happens that my problem is one that shows. I'm late. People say, gee, that Marilyn is just an arrogant girl. Simply not true. If anything, I'm the opposite. When I'm on set, I'm concerned solely with giving the best performance I can. I pour myself completely into those roles to the best of my ability. Anyway, I've seen plenty of people be on time and do the opposite, just chit-chatting away. Gable said about me, when she's there, she's there. All of her is there. She's there to work. Decline things took a turn for the worse after Some Like It Hot. During this period, Marilyn experienced serious problems with her health, that ultimately affected her work. Like I said before, an actor is not a machine. They may work you like you are one, an endless American rush. Go, 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 fast for no reason. But as actors, we get sick too. We are humans. We feel. Some days we are happy and other days we are not. It's true that I've been unwell. I have problems like anyone else. The only difference is my prescription note somehow gets on the front page of the New York Times. In 1959, Marilyn starred in the musical comedy Let's Make Love. Once more, the production was affected by frequent absences. The Misfits was released in 1961. Written by Arthur Miller, Marilyn played the role of divorcee Roslyn, who befriends three aging cowboys. Filming was again affected by her declining health. She spent a week in hospital detox and underwent surgery for endometriosis. The chronic pain in her physical and emotional life was one of the reasons she began to increase her use of barbiturates. Shooting the Misfits also proved difficult for the marriage. Marilyn and Arthur disagreed about the direction of the script. They filed for divorce once production was over. When you're an actor, or embraced by fame and the public in any way, suddenly the secrets you once kept for yourself are opened for the world. I let the whole world into my life through the roles I play, into these secrets and these emotions. But it's outside of the movies that everyone is tugging for more. Everyone wants a chunk of you. When you're famous, just like how your image and name is blown up and enlarged on billboards and theater projections, so are all your weaknesses. Happy birthday, Mr. President. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn sang Happy Birthday to President John F. Kennedy at his early birthday celebration at Madison Square Garden. On that stage, with the light on me, I looked up, all the way to the very top of the rafters. I thought that perhaps if I wasn't Marilyn Monroe, I'd be right up there, my head close to the ceiling, after paying my $2 to get in. Happy birthday, Mr. President. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn sang Happy Birthday to President John F. Kennedy at his early birthday celebration at Madison Square Garden. On that stage, with the light on me, I looked up, all the way to the very top of the rafters. I thought that perhaps if I wasn't Marilyn Monroe, I'd be right up there, my head close to the ceiling, after paying my $2 to get in.